You are listening to HOA Nuisance Files. This is the pettiest snow emergency ever. I am standing in my driveway at 7:30 in the morning, with a shovel in one hand and my phone in the other, and Nancy Young is screaming at me about snow I cleared 2 hours ago. "You are in violation of community snow management standards," she yells, waving a clipboard so close to my face I can see the frost on the metal clip. "You have 48 hours to comply, or the fine schedule starts at $200 per day." I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in a neighborhood called the Cottages at Snowline, which is a homeowners association that takes its name very seriously. I moved here 6 months ago for a quieter life and an IT support manager job I can do from home. The HOA seemed fine at first, standard rules about lawn care and quiet hours, but winter changed everything. The community portal filled up with icy sidewalk photos and accusations, and Nancy Young, the self-appointed community standards chair, started inventing guidelines on the fly. I work strict IT shifts from home, and if I lose gate access or get my car towed, I could miss my window and lose the job. That is the stakes here. Nancy knows it, because she asked what I do for work the second week I moved in, and she has been using it ever since. The violation started with a winter wreath. I left it up 1 week too long, mid-January, and Nancy knocked on my door with a printed notice that looked like a ransom note. It had a deadline that made no sense, something about removal within 72 hours of the communicated standard, but she never communicated a standard. When I asked her to clarify, she said, "You do not get an opinion, you get a fine schedule." That was 3 weeks ago. Now she is back, this time over snow. I shoveled my driveway and the sidewalk in front of my house at 5 in the morning, before my shift started. I piled the snow on the grass strip next to the driveway, same as everyone else on the block. But Nancy showed up with a ruler, knelt down in the snow, and measured the depth of the pile like she was running a forensic investigation. "This exceeds the allowable accumulation height," she says, standing up and brushing snow off her gray-belted wool coat. "You are creating a hazard and a visual blight." I stare at her. Nancy is a middle-aged white woman with dark brown hair and tight curls that do not move in the wind. She is wearing a gray knit hat pulled low, and a badge clip on her coat lapel, though the badge itself has nothing readable on it. She always dresses like she is about to testify at a hearing. "What allowable height?" I ask. "Show me the rule." She taps the clipboard. It is in the winter addendum. "I have never seen a winter addendum," I say. "I checked the portal last night. There is nothing about snow pile height." Nancy smiles, and it is not a friendly smile. "Then you are not looking in the right section. Compliance is your responsibility, not mine." I feel my phone buzz in my pocket. It is my alarm, reminding me I have 15 minutes before my shift starts. I cannot be late. If I miss the login window, the system locks me out and I have to call my manager, and that is a conversation I cannot afford to have. "I need to get to work," I say. "I will look at the addendum after my shift and we can talk then." Nancy steps closer. "No. You will address this now, or I will escalate immediately." I take a breath. My phone battery is dying in the cold and I need to capture evidence fast, so I pull it out and start recording. Nancy sees the camera, and her eyes narrow, but she does not back down. "Go ahead and call whoever you want," she says. "I have a committee for that." I gave her a small thank you, because she just handed me leverage. I keep the camera steady and ask her to repeat the violation. She does. She recites the whole thing again, word for word, about snow accumulation and visual blight and the 48-hour compliance window. I ask her where the winter addendum is posted, and she says it is available upon request through the management company. I ask her if she requested it on my behalf, and she says that is not her job. I thank her, end the recording, and go inside. My shift starts in 8 minutes. I log in with 2 minutes to spare, and I spend the first hour of my shift pulling up every HOA document I can find. There is no winter addendum. There is no snow accumulation rule. There is a general clause about maintaining curb appeal, but it does not define what that means, and it certainly does not give Nancy the authority to measure snow with a ruler. I call my friend Marco during my lunch break. Marco is a local paralegal who helped me review the HOA docs before I bought the house. He listens to the recording, and then he laughs. She is making it up, he says. There is no enforcement authority for snow piles unless they block a road or a fire hydrant. And even then, the county handles it, not the HOA. So what do? I ask. Document everything, he says. Get copies of the governing docs, print them, highlight the sections that matter. If she keeps escalating, you are going to need proof that she is skipping the required steps on purpose. I spend the rest of my lunch break downloading and printing. The HOA governing documents require a written notice with a specific violation cited, a 10-day cure period, and a hearing before any fine can be assessed. Nancy skipped all of that. She went straight to threats. That night, I get home from my shift and find a snow-covered door hanger notice on my front door handle. It is the third one this month. I pull it off and take it inside. The notice is printed on cheap paper, and it has the HOA logo at the top, but it is not signed by anyone official. It just says compliance required, re-inspect in 48 hours, and then a handwritten note at the bottom that says, next step is towing authorization. I take a picture of it and send it to Marco. He replies in under a minute. That is not a legal notice. Save it. I save it. I save everything. I start a folder on my desk labeled HOA evidence, and I put the door hanger inside along with printed copies of the governing docs and the timeline of every interaction I have had with Nancy since the wreath incident. 2 days later, I come home from a grocery run and find Nancy standing in my driveway with 2 other people. One of them is holding a camera on a tripod. The other is holding a clipboard. We are conducting a property inspection, Nancy says. You failed to respond to the compliance notice. I did not fail to respond, I say. You gave me 48 hours and it has been 46. She ignores me. The person with the clipboard walks around my property, taking notes. The person with the camera films the snow pile, the driveway, the front door, and me. I stand there with my grocery bags and watch them trespass onto my property with backup to try to bait a reaction on camera. I set the groceries down, pull out my phone, and start recording again. Nancy sees it and smiles. You are welcome to film, she says. We are conducting official HOA business. On my property, I say. Without my permission. We have the authority under the governing documents, she says. I ask her to cite the section. She does not. Instead, she tells the clipboard person to note my hostile attitude in the report. I go inside, drop the groceries on the counter, and call Marco. They are on your property right now, he asks. Yes. Do not engage, he says. Let them do whatever they are doing, document it, and then we file a formal complaint with the management company. If she keeps this up, she is going to cross a line. She already crossed it, I say. Then we make sure everyone knows, Marco says. That weekend, Nancy escalates again. I get a notice in the mail, this time from the HOA management company, saying I have been assessed a $200 fine for non-compliance with community snow management standards. The notice includes a grainy photo of my snow pile, a copy of the door hanger, and a reference to Section 4.7 of the Winter Addendum. I call the management company. The person who answers the phone sounds tired. I am calling about a fine, I say. I never received a winter addendum, and the governing docs do not list this violation. Hold on, she says. I hear typing. What is your address? I give it to her. More typing. Okay, she says. I see the file. It looks like the board chair submitted the violation report. You can request a hearing if you want to dispute it. I want to dispute it, I say. And I want a copy of the winter addendum. I will send a request to the board, she says. You should hear back in 7 to 10 business days. I do not have 7 to 10 business days, I say. The fine notice says I have to pay within 15 days or it doubles. That is correct, she says. So how do I dispute it if I cannot get the documents in time? I ask. She pauses. You can pay under protest and request a refund after the hearing. I thank her and hang up. Then I call Marco again. They are setting you up, he says. If you pay, they will say you admitted fault. If you do not pay, they will escalate to a lien. You need to force a hearing now. How? I ask. Send a certified letter to the board and the management company, Marco says. Cite the governing docs, demand a hearing within 10 days, and state that you are disputing the fine on the grounds that the violation was not properly noticed and the rule does not exist. Copy me on it. I draft the letter that night and send it certified mail Monday morning. I get the tracking number and wait. 3 days later, I get a response. It is not from the management company. It is from Nancy, and it comes as a printout taped to my front door. Your hearing request has been received. The board will schedule a compliance review at the next regular meeting. In the meantime, you are required to cure the violation or face additional fines. I take a picture, peel it off, and add it to the folder. Then I text Marco. She is not even current on her own dues while lecturing everyone else, he replies. Wait. What? I ask. I ran a public records search on the HOA, Marco says. Nancy Young has an outstanding balance of $800 from last year. The management company sent her 3 notices, and she never paid. She is not in good standing. Can we use that, I ask? Absolutely, Marco says. If she is not in good standing, she does not have the authority to assess fines or call hearings. Print the records and bring them to the meeting. I print everything. I have the governing docs, the timeline, the photos, the notices, the certified letter, and now the records showing Nancy is delinquent. I organize it all into a clean packet with tabs and highlights, and I feel ready. The board meeting is scheduled for the following Tuesday at 7 in the evening. I show up 10 minutes early with the packet in hand. The meeting is held in the clubhouse, which is a small building near the neighborhood entrance with a kitchenette and a folding table. Nancy is already there, sitting at the head of the table with 2 other board members. One of them I recognize from the driveway inspection. The other is new. Nancy sees me and smiles. Glad you could make it, she says. I sit down across from her. Marco is not here yet, but he texted me earlier to say he is running late, and to start without him. If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more HOA chaos. Nancy starts the meeting by reading the violation report out loud. She describes the snow pile, the measurements, the non-compliance, and the fine. She does not mention the missing winter addendum. She does not mention the lack of proper notice. She just recites her version of events like it is settled fact. When she finishes, I raise my hand. Nancy looks at me. You will have a chance to respond, she says. I would like to respond now, I say. She sighs. Go ahead. I open the packet and slide copies across the table to each board member. Then I start talking. I never received a winter addendum, I say. I requested a copy from the management company and I have not received one. The governing documents require written notice with a specific violation cited, a 10-day cure period, and a hearing before any fine can be assessed. I received none of that. I received a door hanger with no signature, a trespass inspection without my consent, and a fine notice that references a rule that does not exist. Nancy interrupts. The winter addendum was approved by the board last year and posted on the portal. I pull up my phone and show them the portal homepage. There is no winter addendum listed. Nancy frowns. Then you are not looking in the right section. I have checked every section, I say. If the addendum exists, I need a copy. If it does not exist, the fine is invalid. The other two board members look uncomfortable. One of them, a man in his 50s with a gray fleece jacket, flips through the packet I handed him. This is pretty detailed, he says. Thank you, I say. I also want to address the fact that the board chair is not in good standing. According to public records, Nancy Young has an outstanding balance of $800 in unpaid dues from last year. The governing documents state that members who are not in good standing cannot hold leadership positions or vote on enforcement matters. Nancy's face goes red. That is irrelevant, she says. It is not irrelevant, I say. If you are not in good standing, you do not have the authority to assess fines or conduct inspections. The management company should have disqualified you months ago. The man in the fleece jacket looks at Nancy. Is that true? He asks. Nancy does not answer. She shuffles papers on the table and mutters something about a payment plan. The door opens and Marco walks in. He is wearing a black winter coat and carrying a briefcase. He nods at me and sits down. Sorry I am late, Marco says. I am here as a paralegal observer on behalf of the homeowner. I have reviewed the case file and I am prepared to assist if needed. Nancy glares at him. This is a closed meeting, she says. It is not closed if the homeowner requests representation, Marco says. He opens his briefcase and pulls out another copy of the governing docs. I have the same packet. The other board members look at each other. Then the man in the fleece jacket speaks. I think we need to table this, he says. We need to get clarification from the management company about the addendum and the dues situation. This is getting too complicated. Nancy slams her hand on the table. We do not need to table anything. The violation is clear, and the fine stands. No, the man says. The fine does not stand until we verify the rule exists and the process was followed. I am voting to table. The other board member, a woman in her 40s, nods. I agree. Nancy looks furious, but she is outvoted. The meeting is tabled, and everyone files out. I thank Marco outside in the parking lot. That went better than I expected, I say. It is not over, Marco says. She is going to escalate. Be ready. He is right. 2 days later, I wake up at 6 in the morning to a loud banging on my door. I throw on a coat and open it to find a tow truck driver standing on my porch. I am here to tow your vehicle, he says. I have an authorization from the HOA. I step outside. My car is parked in my driveway, exactly where it should be. What authorization, I ask. He hands me a printout. It has the HOA logo and a note that says vehicle parked in violation of snow clearance standards, authorization for tow by Community Standards Chair, and Nancy's signature at the bottom. I pull out my phone and call Marco. He answers immediately. They are trying to tow my car, I say. Do not let them, Marco says. Ask the driver for his company name and tell him you are disputing the authorization. I do. The driver looks annoyed, but he pulls out his phone and calls his dispatch. I have a situation, he says. The homeowner is disputing the tow. Can you verify the authorization? He listens for a minute, then hands me the phone. Dispatch wants to talk to you, he says. I take the phone. The dispatcher is a woman who sounds like she has been doing this job for a long time. What is the issue, she asks. The HOA does not have the authority to tow my car, I say. The board chair who signed the authorization is not in good standing, and the violation is under dispute. I have documentation. Hold on, she says. I hear typing. Okay, I am looking at the work order. It says parking violation. Is your car blocking a road or a fire lane? No, I say. It is in my driveway. Then we are not towing it, she says. I am canceling the order. She hangs up. I hand the phone back to the driver. You are not towing my car, I say. The driver shrugs. Fine by me, he says. I am still billing the HOA for the trip. He gets in his truck and leaves. I go inside and add the printout to the evidence folder. That afternoon, Nancy shows up at my door again. She is not alone. She has the same two people from the driveway inspection, plus a woman I do not recognize who is holding a phone and filming. You obstructed a legal tow, Nancy says. I did not obstruct anything, I say. The tow company verified the authorization was invalid and canceled the order. Nancy steps closer. You are in violation of multiple community standards, and you are going to face consequences. I am holding my phone, and I am recording. I have been recording every interaction with Nancy since the first confrontation, and I have hours of footage now. What consequences, I ask. Nancy pulls out her phone and holds it up. She plays an audio clip. It is her voice from 3 weeks ago, saying, "You do not get an opinion, you get a fine schedule." That is your voice, she says. You admitted you violated the rules. I stare at her. That is your voice, I say. Not mine. She realizes her mistake too late. She fumbles with the phone and stops the playback, but it is already recorded on my camera. Marco told me to wait for her to make a big mistake. And this is it. I gave her a small thank you, because she just handed me leverage. I thank Nancy for the recording and go inside. I send the footage to Marco immediately. This is perfect, Marco texts back. She just proved she is retaliating and she admitted the process is punitive. Save everything. I save everything. I spend the rest of the week organizing the evidence into a final packet. I have the governing docs, the timeline, the photos, the notices, the meeting transcript, the tow authorization, the audio clip, and the footage of Nancy playing her own voice back to me. I also have something else. I have a copy of the enforcement policy showing Karen is skipping required steps on purpose. Marco found it buried in the management company's records. The policy clearly states that fines cannot be assessed without a formal hearing, and hearings cannot be called by a single board member. Nancy violated the policy at every step. The following Monday, I get a call from the management company. It is not the tired woman from before. It is a man who introduces himself as the regional manager. I am calling about your case, he says. We have reviewed the file and we have some concerns about the process. I would like to schedule a mediation, I say. We are already scheduling one, he says. The HOA agrees to mediation with a neutral third party. We will have a date for you by the end of the week. The mediation is scheduled for the following Tuesday at 10 in the morning. It is held at the management company's office, which is a bland conference room with a long table and a whiteboard. The mediator is a retired judge who looks like he has seen worse. Nancy is there, along with the 2 other board members. I am there with Marco. The mediator asks everyone to introduce themselves, and then he asks me to present my case. I open the packet and walk through the evidence. I show the missing winter addendum, the improper notices, the trespass inspection, the invalid tow authorization, and the audio clip of Nancy playing her own voice. Then I show the enforcement policy proving she skipped the required steps on purpose. The mediator listens without interrupting. When I finish, he turns to Nancy. "Do you have a response?" he asks. Nancy starts to speak, but the mediator cuts her off. "Before you answer," he says, "I want to clarify something. Did you assess fines without a formal hearing?" Nancy hesitates. "The rules were clear," she says. "That is not what I asked," the mediator says. "Did you assess fines without a hearing?" Nancy does not answer. The mediator looks at the other board members. "Did the board vote on these fines?" he asks. The man in the fleece jacket shakes his head. "No," he says. "Nancy submitted the reports and the management company processed them. We did not vote." The mediator writes something on his notepad. Then he looks at Nancy. "You do not have the authority to assess fines unilaterally," he says. "The governing documents are clear. You violated the process." Nancy tries to argue, but the mediator shuts her down. "I am recommending that the management company reverse all fines, issue a formal apology, and remove you from the board pending an audit," he says. "If you disagree, we can move to arbitration, but I am telling you now that you will lose." Nancy's face goes red. She starts to speak, but one of the board members interrupts. "We agree," he says. "We will vote to remove her at the next meeting." The mediation ends. I walk out with Marco, and I feel lighter than I have in weeks. 2 days later, I get a letter from the management company. The fines are reversed, and Nancy Young is no longer the community standards chair. The letter also states that the management company has been fired on the spot, and the board has hired an interim manager who is freezing all winter enforcement until an audit finishes. The following week, I am clearing snow from my driveway when my neighbor walks over. He is the same neighbor who was shoveling and pausing mid-scoop to stare during the first confrontation. "I heard what happened," he says. "Good for you." "Thanks," I say. "She tried the same thing with me last year," he says. "I just paid the fine because I did not want to deal with it. I wish I had fought back." "You should file a complaint," I say. "If she did it to you, she did it to others." He nods. "I might do that." A few days later, I get an email from the interim manager. He is requesting a meeting with anyone who has had issues with Nancy or the previous enforcement process. I forward the email to my neighbor, and he replies that he is going to attend. The meeting is held the following week, and 12 people show up. Everyone has a story. Everyone has a notice, a fine, a threat, or a tow attempt. The interim manager listens, takes notes, and promises a full review. 2 months later, the audit is finished. The report shows that Nancy assessed over $40,000 in fines over the past 2 years, most of them invalid. The board votes to refund everyone, and the management company pays out of their own budget as part of the settlement. Nancy does not show up to the final board meeting. I hear later that she moved out of the neighborhood. I stay. The new board is reasonable, the new manager is professional, and the winter rules are actually written down now. I still keep the evidence folder, just in case, but I have not needed it. Spring comes, and I take down the winter wreath. No one complains. I plant flowers in the front yard, and I get a compliment from a neighbor I have never spoken to before. I sit on my porch one evening in April, watching the last of the snow melt, and I think about the whole mess. It was exhausting. It was stressful. And it cost me time I will never get back. But I won. I proved Nancy was wrong, I got the fines reversed. And I helped a dozen other people do the same. And I did it all with a folder full of documents and a paralegal friend who knew the rules better than the HOA did. The sidewalk salt pile outside my house is gone now, melted away with the snow. I remember the moment Nancy tried to dump a bag on camera and claim I did it, and I remember pulling out my phone and recording the whole thing. I handed the officer on scene the proof and asked for an incident number immediately, and he wrote it all down. That was the moment I knew I had her. The best part came later. The interim manager scheduled a final wrap-up meeting, and I showed up with the packet one last time. The new board reviewed everything, and then one of them played the audio clip of Nancy saying, "You do not get an opinion, you get a fine schedule." The whole room went silent. Karen gets embarrassed when her own quote plays on speaker. Marco texted me later. Perfect. The board voted unanimously to adopt new transparency rules, including a requirement that all enforcement actions be reviewed by the full board before any fines are assessed. They also voted to post all governing documents on the portal, including the so-called winter addendum that never existed in the first place. I run into the man in the fleece jacket at the grocery store a few weeks later. He stops me in the cereal aisle. "I wanted to thank you," he says. "You did what a lot of us were too scared to do." "I appreciate that," I say. "Nancy ran that board like a dictatorship," he says. "We all knew it, but no one wanted to be the target. You forced us to deal with it." "I am glad it worked out," I say. He nods. "If you ever want to run for the board, let me know. We could use someone who actually reads the rules." I laugh. "I will think about it." I do not run for the board. I have had enough HOA drama for a lifetime. But I do stay involved. I attend the quarterly meetings, I read the minutes, and I keep an eye on the enforcement reports. The new process is working. Fines are rare, notices are clear, and no one is measuring snow piles with a ruler. The whole experience taught me something important. HOAs only have as much power as you let them have. If you know the rules, if you document everything, and if you are willing to fight back, you can win. It is not easy, and it is not fun, but it is possible. And sometimes, just sometimes, you get to watch the person who made your life miserable get taken down by their own words, played back on speaker for everyone to hear. Karen demands proof and then panics when I hand out copies. That was the other moment that made it all worth it. During the mediation, Nancy asked for proof that she skipped the enforcement steps. I handed the mediator a full copy of the enforcement policy, highlighted and tabbed, and I handed Nancy a copy too. She flipped through it, realized what it said, and her face went pale. The mediator asked her if she had anything to say, and she did not. She just sat there, holding the proof of her own misconduct, while the rest of the board stared at her. Marco called it the highlight of his year. I called it justice. The neighborhood is quieter now. The portal is still active, but the tone has changed. People post about lost pets and garage sales instead of icy sidewalk accusations. The new manager responds to questions within 24 hours, and he actually answers them instead of deflecting. I still see the snow-covered door hanger notice in my evidence folder every time I open my desk drawer. It is a reminder of how quickly things can spiral out of control, and how important it is to stand up for yourself when someone tries to abuse the system. I also learned that I am not alone. 12 people showed up to that meeting, and every single one of them had been targeted by Nancy. Some of them had paid thousands of dollars in fines. Some of them had been threatened with liens or foreclosure. And all of them stayed silent because they thought they had no choice. But they did have a choice. We all did. And once we started talking, once we started sharing our stories and our evidence, the whole thing fell apart. Nancy's reign ended because a group of homeowners decided to hold her accountable. It did not take a lawsuit. It did not take a lawyer. It just took documentation, persistence, and a willingness to call her bluff. I think about that every time I walk past the clubhouse, every time I see a new board meeting notice on the portal. I think about how close I came to just paying the fines and moving on, and how much worse it would have been if I had. I think about the tow truck driver who called his dispatch and put it on speaker while Nancy tried to talk over the operator. That was the other set piece I will never forget. Nancy was standing in my driveway, yelling about authorization and compliance, and the driver just held up his phone and let the dispatcher shut her down in real time. "You do not have a valid work order," the dispatcher said. "We are not towing this vehicle. If the HOA has a problem, they can call our office during business hours." Nancy tried to argue, but the driver had already hung up. He looked at me, shrugged, and said, "Happens all the time. HOAs think they can authorize tows without following the rules. They are wrong." That moment was perfect. Nancy had escalated as far as she could go, and she got stopped cold by a tow truck dispatcher who had seen it all before. The interim manager later told me that the tow company filed a complaint with the management company about the invalid work order. That complaint became part of the audit, and it was one of the reasons the management company got fired. Everything connected. Every piece of evidence, every recorded conversation, every document I saved led to the same conclusion. Nancy Young abused her authority, violated the governing documents, and retaliated against homeowners who questioned her. And when it all came out, the system actually worked. The board removed her, the management company was replaced, and the homeowners got their money back. It took time. It took effort. But it worked. I walk past Nancy's old house sometimes. It is empty now, with a for sale sign in the yard. The snow is cleared, the driveway is clean, and there are no violation notices taped to the door. It looks peaceful. I hope whoever buys it has an easier time than I did. The HOA still exists, and it probably always will. But it is different now. It is accountable. It is transparent. And it follows the rules. And I am still here, in my quiet house in Grand Rapids, working my IT shifts and shoveling my driveway when it snows. I do not measure the snow piles. I do not check the portal every hour. I just live my life, the way I was supposed to from the start. And if another Nancy Young ever shows up, I have a folder full of documents and a paralegal on speed dial. I am ready. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.